e-hailing drivers are embarking on a nationwide strike today. They're protesting against exploitation, a lack of regulation and criminal activity in the industry. Now, drivers met with Gauteng Transport MEC Jacob Mamobolo yesterday to talk about their grievances. But let's get you the perspective of e-hailing operators now. We're joined by the spokesperson, Vhatuka Mbelengwa, who joins us in studio, in fact. It's great to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We've been trying to book rides, and in areas where there are one or two drivers available, the rides are exorbitant. But for the most part, you cannot book an Uber, a Didi, any of those e-hailing operators at the moment.
That is certainly the case, and that is the expression of industry to say it's time to take a stand, it's time to get off these platforms, it's time to disrupt public transportation and get government to hear us and take our call for regulation seriously.
It was a difficult decision, wasn't it, to go on this 3-day strike because of the impact on the finances of drivers. Effectively, they're not earning an income for the next 3 days.
Definitely, it is a difficult decision, but the reality is we're barely earning an income anyway. So, Uber, Bolt have taken everything we have. We've decided to sacrifice the little we remained with in order for us to try and get industry into a better condition,
So tell us about the big sticking point for Uber drivers at the moment. And I want to begin with the statement that you've just made there, that Uber, Bolt, Didi, these platforms take most of the money that drivers earn. So on a trip, if I'm booking a trip for 100 Rand, how much of that goes to the e-hailing platform?
Look, in reality, it's close on 40%. On their public platforms, Uber will declare 25%. But once you then consider all the other booking costs and other hidden costs, it rises closer to between 35 and 40%.
Yeah.
Now, because it's subject to dynamic pricing, we're never really clear up until the invoice comes through, and sometimes not all the information redacted is clear on the invoice. But importantly, we're saying, pricing is the issue. And, these are tech companies. That's the position they have placed themselves in as tech companies. We are referred to as independent operators. And as such, we should be able to determine the rate at which we sell our own labor. There is no decision-making platform. They take these decisions independently. And, it's because when we're working at a loss, it's of no consequence. So they can do what they like.
They can do what they like.
That's essentially what they do.
Yeah, they can take as much of the money as they like.
That's exactly what they do. They do what they want. They add vehicles at an uncontrolled rate, which makes industry saturated, and it makes it more and more harder for industry participants to make more money. And we're saying a regulated framework can prevent against this.
How much of that meeting with Jacob Mamobolo yesterday yielded any fruit? Did you find any joy with some of the issues, especially this one that you put on the table?
Quite frankly, our feeling is that it was a reactive meeting as a consequence of public pressure and media engagement. We are still engaging with industry participants, and we will offer an official independent response. Currently, there is a joint statement which we didn't have the opportunity to make input on, but within the next 24 hours, we will offer an official statement in regard to the meeting with MEC Mamobolo.
Okay. In terms of the kinds of financial pressure that drivers are under, drivers who are part of these e-hailing platforms, there's also the price of petrol to consider here.
There's the price of petrol to consider, but I think what we truly need to consider is that the cost of entry into industry. Now, app companies then determine the sort of vehicles they want for the sort of experience they want to offer drivers, or customers rather. And there is a financial implication to that. So you buy an average Corolla that's now financed over 5 years, you're going to pay over 500,000 Rand for it. We feel that the relationship in regulated framework should say, if I'm going to commit myself to a 5-year finance agreement, we should have a 5-year-long binding partnership with app companies, and whereby there are rules and regulations that will govern our relationship. We're saying that if I am going to be that committed, and my family, my grandmother, my brother, my siblings, and we need to understand it at a granular level, that the billions that are in this business within South Africa emanate from our homes. We're just trying to make sure that we are getting more of our own siblings more economically active, so that they are active, positive participants within the economy, but actually they're being led into an industry that's exploitative. So if we have a dispute, there's no right of reply. Uber will just block somebody, Bolt will just block somebody, and there'll be no process of sort of engagement or mediation to understand what the issue is.
Because on the face of it, it's easy for them to let a driver go, isn't it?
There's no obligation. You know, there's no consideration of the impact on the human cost here. And we're saying it can't be that way. You know, we've got labor laws, we've got a constitution that seeks to protect people. Why are these laws not being used? You know, why is there such reluctance from government officials? You know, and there's never a clear answer on this. You know, every time we engage and ask a difficult question, we're always offered the response of, yeah, we must engage. We were worried about legal action from these organizations. They've got a lot of money, but there's no consideration for the impact of society. There's no fear for the response that society may put together. And this protest and our call to society to support us is to say, government, you can't be fearful of global app companies. You need to be appreciative of the concern of society. We can't continually invite international people to come participate within our economy and not govern how they rule. And simply not, and pay no regard to domestic investment within sector, but continually ask for international investment within economy.
And not hold them accountable.
How do we protect our own investment internally?
Absolutely. What's been the response from these e-hailing platforms like Uber, Bolt, Didi, when drivers have gone to them with these kinds of concerns?
Over the years, I've been part of a number of memorandum submissions to all the app companies, and we have not received a single response to any memorandum. Their position is silence. Their position is we cannot engage. We cannot in any way find ourselves availing ourselves to being accountable to drivers. Because once they're available, then maybe there'll be some sort of legal action. You know, I think what's most unfortunate in our experience is that, you know, accountability is something we're taught to be a value that we should be pursuant of. But there's no accountability, not from app companies, not from government officials. There's a lack of willingness to regulate. And there's nobody, who do we hold accountable? We're going to the DTIC today to say, can you give us a definition of what these companies are? And what is the framework that we can hold them accountable in? Because on one moment, Uber will say, we're a tech provider. But then their behavior is reflective of that of an employer. So, you know, there's this undefined relationship that exists. And this allows them to assume a position of convenience when it serves them. When we want to hold them accountable, they are a tech partner. You know, when there's issues within industry, they want to then divert criminality and all the violence to industry participants, whereby they themselves are bringing up this situation.
It's certainly an ongoing story that we're tracking here over the next 3 days. That strike, as we now know, and if you've tried to book on any of these e-hailing platforms, you will see in many of the provinces it's unavailable, and where one or two drivers are available, the price is exorbitant. Vhatuka Mbelengwa, thanks very much for coming into studio. E-hailing spokesperson outlining the big issues confronting the sector.